Humongous Entertainment was responsible for creating multiple beloved video game franchises in the 90s. Edutainment is a series of games for younger audiences that was more focused on fun and entertainment over strict learning. And one of these humongous edutainment franchises was Putt-Putt, which followed a chipper purple car as they encountered various adventures and obstacles. Though Putt-Putt would go on to participate in such ambitious adventures as professional sports and literal space travel, their adventures would have humble beginnings in the world of parades. So in today's video, I'll be going over my playthrough of Putt-Putt Joins the Parade, and giving you my thoughts on the game.
Stars and Stripes!
Hello and welcome to another Carrot Scraps video, and by another, I mean the 146th. And of course, as usual, I want to give a couple of disclaimers up front. This video is one of many ramble reviews that I have on the channel, which means that it's not a scripted review. I do have a list of notes that I'll be looking at throughout the video, but as you can tell, it won't be a strict script. So I might ramble a little bit, and I hope you don't mind. In addition, this is my first time playing Putt-Putt Joins the Parade. I've played other Putt-Putt games before, specifically the one where he goes to the moon, but this is the first time that I'm playing this specific game. Of course, if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know that I found a mysterious computer in the woods around my house, and I was finally able to get into it and check out some of the files inside. And along with a number of other games, something I found was a huge collection of Humongous Entertainment games, which of course included the Putt-Putt collection. So my curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to start playing this series. And the reason I'm playing this today is because Putt-Putt Joins the Parade is the first Putt-Putt game in the series. And this game was released in 1992 and came out right before Putt-Putt Goes to the Moon, a game that, as you can tell, I am very obsessed with. I just love the idea that this car went straight to the moon after joining a parade, and I can't wait to talk about that game. But of course, we have to talk about the origins of Putt-Putt first, where he joins the parade. So without further ado, let's get into the video for today and talk about what this game is. So, what do you do in Putt-Putt Saves the World? I mean, Putt-Putt Goes to the Parade. Well, it's a point-and-click adventure, which is a genre of games that I've become more and more fascinated with on my PC journey, and I think it's a style and genre of game that I'm gonna be attracted to the most when it comes to exploring old-school PC games. Putt-Putt is, of course, a game made for younger audiences. It's made for kids, so it's gonna be a lot more simple when it comes to its design. And if you don't know what a point-and-click adventure game is, essentially what you do is you just point around the screen and click. You're presented with several different areas, several different screens, in the case of Putt-Putt, several different locations, and then you can click around the screen for kind of two separate engagements. In one way, you can engage with the environment in a way that's superficial. Let's say that you click on a flower and then it just says something like, "Hello, Putt-Putt, are you going to the moon anytime soon?" And then of course you'd say no, because that doesn't make any sense. And that won't have any effect on the game, right? Or you can click on the environment to learn something, to get information, or to gain an item that you can use to progress. And you have an inventory that you can toggle, that you can kind of manage, and you're essentially collecting items so that way you can use those items to either progress to different locations or to complete the game. The way that you complete Putt-Putt Goes to the Parade is by going to the parade, but you need a couple of things first. Essentially, you need a balloon, for some reason. You need a puppy, or I guess an animal, but a puppy for some reason. And then you also need a car wash, which probably makes the most sense out of those three. You need to look good if you're going to go to the parade. And your events and the events of the game are built around you getting those items. And some items are easier to get. Some items are more difficult to get. In my playthrough, I had to earn money, and I would mow lawns, and I delivered somebody's groceries. Actually, now that I think about it, these are the only ways you can earn money from what I can think of. Again, this isn't meant to be a incredibly challenging game. If you're looking at this game as a game that is going to present an adult with some kind of challenge, that's really not the point. Sure, it might be a little difficult as an adult to figure out some of the solutions to these problems, but I think typically these are going to be more challenging for younger audiences, and they're made to be understood and solved pretty quickly. But it's also just meant to be this kind of fun adventure with, you know, just silly looking things, and to encounter silly and interesting little events and little encounters. I don't think challenge is really the point of this. But I still think that you can get a lot out of it if you know that going in, obviously, and if you have a nostalgia for these kinds of games, and if you just like point-and-click adventures in general. I certainly had fun figuring out how to play, but that's generally the idea of Putt-Putt. You go around, you point, you click, and then you try your best to get the items that you need to get into the parade. So with that description out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the gameplay in Putt-Putt Saves the World. I mean, Putt-Putt Goes to the Parade. So when it comes to the gameplay in Putt-Putt Goes to the Parade, I really like it. It's fairly simple. It's kind of hard to mess up a point-and-click adventure, right? So I guess that's not really the scale I'm looking at this on, right? I'm not judging whether it points and clicks properly. I suppose when I'm judging gameplay for a Putt-Putt game, I'm more so judging the content that comes with that click. You know, is it exciting to find new things? Is it interesting when you click on something and it does something? I guess that's kind of the criteria to judge a Putt-Putt game on, and I think that there's a lot of fun stuff to find here. I think it's pretty mild. It's not as good as maybe other point-and-click adventure games, but again, this is for a younger audience, but I really did get hit with like a wave of nostalgia playing this. Again, even though Putt-Putt really isn't a game that I played much during my childhood, it's just this style of game, the music, the structure of it, and then also that feeling of just clicking on the background and seeing what happens is a big part of point-and-click adventure games, and there just aren't many of those anymore. And so remembering back to a time when I did play a lot of those, it is very nostalgic. So I had a lot of fun just clicking on random things and being surprised that, you know, the environments engaged with me. I thought that was really cool. Let's go over some of just the things that I found and the things that I encountered while we're talking about this. One of the weirdest details when you start the game, to me anyway, is cereal. So when you start, you have to get ready for the day, or maybe you don't even have to. Maybe you can just leave. Although I have to assume, I'm assuming that you have to get ready for the day. And you brush your teeth as Putt-Putt the car, and you eat cereal, you know, you eat your breakfast. But there's this moment where Putt-Putt needs like oil for their cereal, and I get it, right? The joke is that it's a car, Putt-Putt is a car, and they need oil instead of milk. But I'm just like, why do you need oil? You're already a car eating, forget about the fact that you're a car with a face. You're a car eating cereal. Why does oil need to substitute milk? You're already doing something unnatural. Just put milk in your cereal. I just thought that was so weird. And I'm like, now all these kids are going to be putting oil in their cereal. No, I doubt that very highly. But I just thought it was so funny. Like, why at this stage in the process? I mean, why not, like, eat your cereal out of a coaster or something like that? I don't know. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me that we replace the milk with oil. But I did, you know, just thought that was funny. Something I was very impressed by in this early starting room is the horn wall. They're just, I don't know, is inexplicably horns all over this wall behind Putt-Putt. And I was surprised, again, I was surprised by each and every one of them that they all were able to make sound and that you could engage with them. Kind of just re-engaging with point-and-click adventures and rediscovering, oh wait, everything is probably able to be, clicked on and probably has a reaction to it. But I also just wonder, why does Putt-Putt need so many horns on his wall? I just don't think that he does. I don't think he needs all those horns. That's my hot take there. Now, before you run, or I suppose drive into town, you run into your first obstacle, and this will set up a lot of different obstacles throughout Putt-Putt. And it's just a cow, not a car cow, just a regular cow in the road. And the question is, how do you get this cow to move? And at first my brain was like, I need to find an item, which is not the wrong impulse. You do need to find items to get things to move or to clear the road later in the game, but here you just needed to hit the horn. the horn, just like from the horn wall. Oh my gosh, all of my training has led up to this moment. But you get the cow to move by yelling at it, essentially, which is very nice. In town, Smokey lets you know what's good and lets you know that the tutorial is over and you're going to be thrown into the real game. You're out here looking for balloons or balloon. You're out here looking for a puppy and you need a car wash. You need to earn money to get a car wash. He says this thing that's like, I'm sure you'll find a dog or I'm sure you'll find a puppy. And I just think that's way too optimistic, especially to tell like a kid who presumably goes home to their parents and is just like, don't worry, you'll find a dog, and I'm sure your parents will just adopt the dog right after. I don't know, there's way too much certainty here with the fact that Putt-Putt will get a dog and that they will be able to keep the dog. But in the end, Smokey is right. I do find and keep that dog, and I think this dog stays with us throughout the rest of the series. But the main mechanic here, or the main quest I suppose we're on, is to mow lawns to earn coins. Which we will then use. We will redeem those coins to get a car wash, or we deliver groceries to a specific resident, and then we will also earn a coin. Now, the thing is, I was mowing lawns like crazy. I was mowing almost everyone's lawns. There are a couple of different roads that you can go to. There's a surprising amount of locations, in my opinion. I was really impressed by how many places I could go in the first Putt-Putt game. But I was mowing a bunch of lawns, and then I kind of wondered, wait, how many coins do I need? And then I went back and I only needed 2. So it's definitely, you know, you can speed run this game at 100%, and I could have gotten a better time. I finished Putt-Putt in about 35 minutes, but you can get a way better time than me, and it's just by getting those 2 coins. And now that I think about it, you probably don't need to deliver the groceries because it's only delivering 1 coin to you. But either way, I did both of these things. I mowed lawns, I delivered groceries, and you got to see all of these different neighborhoods and interact with all of these different cars, and there's a lot of personality here. One of the best things about this game is the personality and, you know, the voice acting and all this stuff. Let's talk about the lawn mowing mini game. There's a mini game here where you actually get to mow the lawn, which again, as somebody who's experienced with point-and-click adventures, I was not expecting this little mini game here. I was just expecting to click and point throughout the entire game. So when I got control over this lawnmower driven by a car, I was very, very excited. I then was a little disappointed because, first of all, there are obstacles on the field, right? Like you have this like cement or something in the way of letting you mow the grass. And at first I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to dodge, you know, all of this cement, all of this concrete, whatever it is, all of these obstacles. But then it turns out that you can just go right over that. There's no penalty for doing that. Later on, I think there are fountains that are introduced that prevent your progress. But at the start, you basically can just go wherever you want and mow whatever you want. And interestingly enough, furthermore, you can just mow however much you want. You don't need to do the entire lawn. You can just mow in the worst shape ever and essentially leave this neighbor with a worse lawn than they started with, and they will still pay you. And that is fraud, Putt-Putt. That is fraud, and you are gonna be audited. But I realized that a little bit later. I was just like, let's see what will happen. And I will say that they do turn you away occasionally. I suppose there's a certain amount of the lawn that you need to mow before they'll actually pay you. I thought you could just like go in and go out. But no, you do need to mow some percentage, but it's not a very large percentage. And I guess the last thing I'll say about these lawns is that it feels like they incrementally make them more quote-unquote complicated or complex. So you start off with like the simplest lawn, which is just, you know, a regular lawn. There's nothing on the field, and then you get the tiles, and then you get the fountains, and I just think that's cool. In general, you know, I criticize or joke about the difficulty not being too difficult, or the, you know, it's not that hard of a mini game, and there are all these ways you can cut corners. But at the end of the day, again, this is for very young kids, and not like, you know, this is for very, very young kids just learning how to like interact with the world. And I feel like this is you know, a fine mini game. You know, I joke, but I don't really want this game to be too difficult. It's fine that, you know, the lawn mowing mini game isn't the hardest thing in the world. Eventually, we find our dog in the spooky, scary cave outside of town. It is a wonderful, scary cave. As a horror fan, I was excited to see a little shred of terror in Putt-Putt Saves the Universe. course. And that's where the dog was. The dog was just scared inside the cave. We gave them a bone that we found in one of the lawns that we mowed, and then we have a dog, and a dog is added to our inventory, which is very funny to me whenever you add a living thing to your car's inventory. And then later we also go to the movie theater, which of course I was very excited about because that's, where my part-time job is. So I was like, oh my gosh, I could see Putt-Putt at my job. But Putt-Putt doesn't go to see a movie, which I was very disappointed about. Instead, they are helping to find a lost child car. And you basically go through and just have to find the car that looks the most similar to the photo, which is fairly easy. Again, very simple games. You find the car, you get in, you get out, you get a balloon, and then you're on your way. And you can basically, go to finishing the game shortly after that. Although one of the last things I did have to do was clear the road of the nails, which I did by going to the toy store, grabbing a magnet, which I left behind. And for a second, when I went to the toy store, I was excited because I was like, oh, there's more options for my coins. I can spend my coins in other places. But no, you can just earn an excess of coins. You only need 2 coins to complete the game, I believe, and you can just earn way, way more than that. And I thought it would have been cool to have some optional toys that you could have bought at the toy store. I think those little things that maybe don't prevent progress but add a little bit more if a kid does feel like getting better at the game would be pretty cool. But instead of buying a magnet or buying a toy that would help you, you just get your magnet. Why is Putt-Putt walking around with a magnet? Whatever. I don't want to police what he plays with. But you get the magnet, you clear the road, and then you're able to progress. And from there, you go to the parade, and you're able to see multiple cars driving by with their multiple animals. I suppose you can have any animal, because there was a cat, there was a bird, there was a strange creature that refused to reveal itself, which of course I loved because I love strange creatures that refuse to reveal themselves. I house a strange creature that refuses to reveal itself in my home, so that felt very near and dear to my heart. But that's the end of Putt-Putt Goes to the Parade. And with that description, or I guess discussion about the gameplay and my thoughts on the gameplay, let's move on to one of the last parts of the video and talk about presentation. Now, when I'm talking about presentation, we're talking about the graphics, we're talking about the backgrounds, we're talking about the character designs, music, voice acting, everything that involves presentation. I thought we'd just put it all here. And let me just say, this game looks absolutely beautiful. I love the environments, I love the graphics, I love the way it looks. It definitely is cut from a certain time. And again, I felt a lot of nostalgia playing this game, even if this game, wasn't a part of my personal childhood. That being said, Putt-Putt does look horrifying occasionally, especially in the shots where he's like super far away. But most of the time, he looks like a sweet little car and he's excited about his adventure. But every now and again, he'll be just far away enough for him to look absolutely terrifying. But that's the risk you take when you create a car with a face. Putt-Putt did a great job as a voice actor. I think the voice actor did really great. Obviously, they're a kid, and I'm not the biggest fan of child actors when it comes to media. I think in general we should avoid using them if possible. However, it does have a good effect. Like, I don't know, when you have a child character, it does sound better when you have a kid voice acting them. So I suppose in a game like this, where I can't imagine this actor voice acted for very long, right? Like, I feel like they could have gotten all of Putt-Putt's lines in one sitting, just being like, hey, read this, or hey, let's interact with each other, and they recorded it in maybe 2 hours, maybe even 1 hour. I feel like that's acceptable and that's fine, and I think that they did a great job, and it definitely adds a level of charm to the game. And I think it also is nice for kids when they're playing a game like this to be like, hey, I recognize that voice, I sound like that car, and maybe I'm like that car, and I feel like a car right now. But yeah, Putt-Putt was a great voice actor, and I think they did a great job with their voice acting. And the other voice actors were pretty great. I really liked going through the town and the different streets and meeting all the different cars, both because they all looked vastly different than each other. That was just fun to see different vehicles, and seeing all of these different vehicles that sound different, have different names, live in different houses. That little layer of depth makes it feel much larger, and I can definitely relate as a kid to this feeling of just these little details adding this kind of extension to the game. It feels like it's a larger world that you're a part of, which is exciting by just adding these little things. So being able to meet every neighbor, even if it's not required or or it's not important, is definitely an important part of a point-and-click adventure, I think. There are a lot of cars that have interesting names. I think one of them is named Bronco, and I don't know anything about cars, I apologize, but that I think is a car reference, a Bronco. So I have to imagine that there are other references to cars throughout this game, and so that should be pretty cool, right? Like, if you have some knowledge when it comes to cars. My wife is going to be very angry at me because they always know stuff about cars, and they're upset that I don't know more. But I know Bronco. I know Bronco is a car, but he is not my favorite car. My favorite car is Trixie, because they have a fun accent. That is the best car in the game. Some of these cars have very different houses and very different lawns, and I like kind of figuring out what kind of, not person, but what kind of car they are just by looking at, you know, the things that they leave outside and the way that they keep their home. I don't know. I feel like you can really write a whole fan fiction based on one of these cars, just by looking at how messy their house is. But yeah, the voice acting is pretty great in the game. It does the job. It gets the job done. But what really knocks it out of the park is the music. I'm always going to talk about the music when it comes to these old PC games. I love music soundtracks for 90s PC games. Music soundtracks, as if there's like some other kind of soundtrack. But these scores, these soundtracks of these 90s PC games are often the highlights of a lot of these games. Oftentimes, I'm always just looking, regardless of playing these games, I'm always looking for new soundtracks to listen to, and I'm always looking for musicians and artists who make music that is similar to these soundtracks or are inspired by these soundtracks actively. There's just something about the soundtracks from these games, whether they're for children's games or whether they are for adult games, that, you know, enchant me. From Fallout to Putt-Putt, I really do love the soundtracks for these games, and Putt-Putt does not let me down. I really liked a lot of the tracks. It's definitely not like my favorite. It's not like every single track is a banger, but like, all of the tracks are good at the very least, right? If not every track is amazing or great, but most of the tracks are good and they are pleasant and they work really well. It makes me want to exist for longer in this town because the music is good. I think my favorite track is the at the toy store. There is a monkey room right before. That track is great. That's probably one of my favorites. I'll probably be putting that on a playlist. I like that one a lot. And then I like the credits song as well. But in general, I think the music is very good. Again, not too many great tracks, not like astounding tracks, but a lot of the majority of them are good tracks to listen to. Now, I was surprised to find that when you get to the toy shop, there's a toy that has 4 animals that tell jokes. I'm a little confused now that I think about this. Are these animals or are these toy animals? Because some of them look like they're in the parade later. So are these just animals chilling in the toy shop that are much smaller? I don't know. I have to assume that they're toys, but they essentially just tell you jokes, and they have a lot of material. I wasn't expecting to click on these 4 animals and get so many jokes out of them, and they interact in really interesting ways. I was expecting one joke from all, I was just expecting one joke at first, and then I realized you can click on multiple of them, and so I was expecting one joke from each of them. But if you click on the same animal multiple times, you'll get multiple jokes, and if I understand correctly, you know, each joke is set up like a knock-knock punchline, right? Like, it's one animal says something, another animal responds. So you can start the joke with one animal and then click on one of the other 3 to get a different response, and I feel like you can get a lot of different interesting responses from that. So I honestly was sitting there for a little while just interacting with these animals, seeing how many jokes I could get. And again, it's one of those details where as a kid I got to imagine this is fun to just be like, oh wow, I could just endlessly, you know, interact with this part of the game. And I thought the performances were really great. I thought some of the jokes were really funny. Well, really funny is a strong word for it, but I thought some of the jokes made me giggle. There was one joke about Puff the Magic Dragon, and they like laugh about like, oh, they said Puff, like, but I'm pretty sure Puff the Magic Dragon is a reference to smoking weed. Am I wrong on that? That's the song, Puff the Magic Dragon, and the Magic Dragon is smoking weed. I'm not here to cancel Putt-Putt for putting a weed reference in their game. I just don't know if that's what they're referencing, and find it interesting if they do. But yeah, so I like this section of the game, and I was surprised by how much there was here. Although I will say that they totally jump scared me when I first clicked on them. I was not expecting that level of detail, and I actually was a little frightened. Only a little bit though, not a lot of it frightened. And I suppose the last thing I'll say about presentation for Putt-Putt Saves the Town is that I really like the sun. I think the sun looked, oh wait, no I don't. I just checked my notes. I was afraid of the sun. The sun looked really scary. I don't know what it is about suns with faces. I guess that's just it, right? Like, if you put a face on a sun, it's unnatural inherently, but maybe art designers are just naturally driven to make it a little more demented. I don't know if I mean, it definitely wasn't intended to look scary, but I do think that the sun looks a little too frightening at the end of Putt-Putt. I'm trying to enjoy the end of this game. And that also brings me to another point. The green and red faces, which signify yes and no, go and stop in this game. I just realized that those are for the lights. They have faces as well, and they're a little demented as well. In addition, they're a little creepy. They're a little scary. They are good demons for haunting people's nightmares, not great buttons for a Putt-Putt game. So in the end, I had a lot of fun playing Putt-Putt Goes to the Parade. I had a lot of fun playing Putt-Putt Goes to the Parade. I'm sorry, it's gonna happen every time I play a Putt-Putt game. I'm just gonna feel naturally inclined to add my own title. It's just one of those things. But I had a lot of fun playing Putt-Putt Goes to the Parade. It really did bring me back to a time where I played a lot of games like this, and this is exactly what I was looking for. I talked in a recent video about having a lot of nostalgia for 90s PC games and wanting to return to them, and something I didn't mention in that video that I really wanted to, it was kind of the main point and I just forgot to because I got so wrapped up in memories, is the fact that 90s PC games, in my opinion, are designed differently than modern games are now, and I miss the design choices of those older games. And one of those design choices that I really love and I really miss are point-and-click adventures. And so when I'm looking back at these older games and revisiting them and trying to play these older games, what I was looking for was exactly what I got from Putt-Putt. I wanted the nostalgia from this style of game, and it perfectly provided it for me. I think this game is great. I think if you have a kid and you want them to play something, I think this would be a great game for them to play. I don't think every game needs to be Mario Brothers for it to be compelling for a kid to play. I think some games can just be fun, and I find or at least I have a feeling that taking away the stakes and having it be a little bit more calm and a little bit more chill, especially for a younger kid, is a perfect atmosphere for them. And I think Putt-Putt is a great game for kids back in the day, and I think it totally holds up now. And unlike a lot of other PC games, Putt-Putt is available on modern systems. I don't know if this game is available on the Switch. I know other Putt-Putt games are, but at the very least you can play it on PC, and it totally holds up. So if you have a kid, I highly recommend allowing them to play this. I think this game is totally fine for them, and I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it would be a good fit for a lot of kids. As for me and what I would give it, if I was going to give this game a rating out of 20, which is something that everybody does, I don't even need to describe that. People rate things out of 20. That's just what everyone on the planet does. If I was going to give Putt-Putt Goes to the Parade a grade out of 20, I would give it a 13 out of 20. If it had a little bit more options for you to spend the coins that you earn, if it made the lawnmower game a little bit more challenging, not incredibly more challenging, but just a little bit more challenging, and if it maybe had a couple more areas to explore or a couple more ways to interact with the cars on each of the streets, I would have given it a little bit higher of a grade. But in general, even though I give it a 13 out of 20, that's not a bad game. I think this is a fun game for what it is, for what it was made for, and I highly recommend it to people who are nostalgic for this era, for people who haven't played Putt-Putt in a while and want to revisit it, and for people who have kids. I think this game is great, and I think I'm excited to play the next Putt-Putt game. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I want to thank you so much for watching. If for some reason you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and to subscribe to my channel for more. As regular viewers know, I make a variety of content on my channel, and I'm always going to make the videos that I want to make. But if you see something you enjoy, make sure to let me know, and I'll try to prioritize that kind of content in the future. Over on Twitch, I typically play superhero games such as Marvel's Avengers and Gotham Knights, with the occasional horror game like Resident Evil. So if that sounds interesting to you at all, make sure to check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/carrotscraps. And all my other social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram are at carrotscraps as well. So I want to thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. So I think the biggest thing that I learned from Putt-Putt Joins the Parade is that it's better than Devil May Cry 2. I played Devil May Cry 2 for the first time this weekend, and Putt-Putt Joins the Parade is unironically better, in my opinion. And look, I went into Devil May Cry 2 knowing people didn't like it and wanting to give it a second chance and saying it can't be as bad as people say it is. I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt, and yet Putt-Putt Joins the Parade is better. So do with that information, what you will.